Hi, we're going to let everyone file in. I am Ellen with Habit Aware, Director of Awareness and Peer Coach, and I am joined by Dr. Hilary Weingarden, who is our Clinical Research Director. And boy, we've got some really cool stuff to share with you today, and we're so excited. And while this is a webinar, and you see the two of us. We have made this somewhat interactive, but you get to choose your own adventure. You get to choose how interactive you'd like to be, and we're going to give you a couple of polls and some things to reflect on. We also have the chat live. We will be doing a Q&A at the end, but feel free to put some chats in, and Hillary and I will do our best to manage that as we are getting together. So let's start with how do you view BFRBs? And I want you to think about just for a moment about how BFRBs are portrayed in the media or how somebody who doesn't really understand BFRBs. How do they think about it? And BFRBs are body-focused repetitive behaviors like hair pulling, which we're going to talk about, as well as skin picking, nail biting, nose picking, cheek biting, anything that's done with the body over and over in a self-soothing way. So do you have a picture in your minds? Does it look like that? Or maybe like that? Or this? Or I hate it when, so I shouldn't say hate. I don't like it when someone says, that was a nail biter, right? Or that was so hard I could pull out my hair. Even SpongeBob, look at him with his nails. But we have other ways of looking at BFRBs. And so, Hillary, I am going to move to our next slide.
Yeah, so when Ellen and I started to put this together, we were just thinking about how do people who aren't so familiar with BFRBs portray them or think of them? How does the media portray BFRBs? And sorry, I have young kids. They're almost
Yeah.
always, if you can hear them in the background, they're almost always portrayed as these sort of simple, straightforward behaviors that are universally done in response to stress and anxiety. But if you reflect on your experience, does that capture the nuance of the experience? Of course it doesn't. It's very far from accurate. So we have up here some of the other functions that we know from our experience BFRBs can serve. And these are just some of them. They're examples. But BFRBs are functional behaviors. They serve different purposes for us at different times throughout the day. The problem is that if we assume, or if others assume, that BFRBs are these simple behaviors that are always triggered by stress or anxiety, then we have no nuance in how we think about interventions. You know, if you have a hammer, you're always going to think it's a nail. You're always going to give the same intervention, regardless of the different purposes and the different contexts that the BFRB are showing up for at different times in the day. So let's move on. So the heart of a good intervention for a BFRB is starting to understand the where, the when your BFRB is happening. So you can sort of put the puzzle pieces together for the why. You know, where am I doing this? What's happening when I'm doing this? How am I feeling? Give you clues into what are the functions that this is filling. And that's really the ticket to matching an intervention that meets that need and has nuance, is appropriate to the context of the moment when when the BFRB arises, and meets the need that the BFRB is filling at that moment. So this is the heart of it all. But when you step back and look at what research is out there, there's actually not a lot. We don't know as a field very much about where, when, why people do their BFRBs. Of course, habit
Until
aware.
now. Until now.
Yeah. So let me tell you what we learned, what we did. So we have NIH funding that we got for a collaboration with our academic partners at Kent State University. And with the NIH funding, we recruited 37 adults who have hair pulling disorder. And we asked them to log the context of their hair pulling episodes for 6 weeks. So they got prompted by a phone app 4 times a day. They could also log other hair pulling episodes that happened spontaneously throughout the day. And we asked them, since we last prompted you for any hair pulling episodes that have happened, where were you? How were you feeling? And what were you doing at the start of the episode? So from this work, we gathered data on over 2,000 hair pulling episodes. So this is some of the richest data that we have as a field on hair pulling. And I want to pause before I keep going to just mention that we collected these data in people who have hair pulling disorder, but BFRBs are not so different one from another. And so we really expect that what we're going to share tonight is going to generalize to other BFRBs. So if you're joining us and you don't have hair pulling disorder, but maybe you have skin picking or nail biting or cheek biting, or you have clients with varying BFRBs, if you're a clinician, we suspect that these results generalize across these conditions. Let's start, before I tell you what we found, we're curious to see how it matches your experiences. So if you're willing to participate in a poll, then we're going to ask you now what time of day you most often do your BFRB, or where you most often do your BFRB.
All right, here we go. We're launching that poll. And we're going to give it we'll give it about a minute. We're getting there. This is interesting. I'm super excited to share this. All right, folks, keep going. Keep going. And let's see, we have a few more people. I can't see who, but I can see that this is moving along. All right. If you haven't voted, go ahead and put your vote in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end the poll. Look at that. So what we're seeing is from your poll, from you sitting in the audience, the highest, 81%, if I'm reading this right, 2 out of 27 said home. And we also have time and place. So somehow I did both at the same time, which I didn't mean to do, but that's all right. Technology, you know. We also have evening was the highest time.
Okay.
Afternoon was 12 at 80%.
Oh, wow.
And afternoon was 12%. Morning is 4%. And early AM, like 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. is 4%. And the where oh, here we go. Okay. I have to scroll. So the highest was home, 81%. Hilary, guess what the next one was? It was car, 7%.
Car. I know it's car.
Car, 81% home, 7% car,
Oh,
7%
interesting.
work, and 4% other.
Okay, well, I'm finding this interesting because I know what we found, but let's
Yeah.
show
So,
folks our next slide.
so, uh,
Cool. Okay. So
okay.
really a lot in the evening,
Yep.
which I'll show you. That's different from our data to tell you the punchline. And then the where data look exactly like the data we collected, exactly like it.
So I'm going to
Okay.
stop
I'm
sharing this
nerding
poll.
out as a researcher, but can you progress to the next slide?
Yes, yes, I can. Yes, I
Thank you.
can.
Okay, so these are the results that we got from our 2000 polling episodes. So location looks exactly like what our attendees just
You
punched
said.
in on their poll. And
Yep.
actually, these results, so we found that 80% of hair pulling episodes happened at people's homes, and these data were collected in 2024. So this wasn't during like lockdown or anything like that. So for me as a clinician who treats BFRBs, I was pretty surprised by this. I think I was expecting to see a bit more car. Um, I was thinking about, and this reflects what you just told us too.
Yes.
So it may be that this is just the fact that when you look across 6 weeks, you do have almost 10% of episodes in the car. So it's not nothing, but most of them are happening at home. Um, We also looked at time of day, and our data were pretty
Yes.
different from what, oh, can you go back?
Oh, oh, yes, yes.
Okay. Our data were pretty different from what you all entered just now. But what we found was that all day, people are kind of engaging in their BFRB all day on average. The only time they're really not is when sleeping at night from 12 to 6 a.m. Um, so let's keep going.
Yes. So we have another poll. And so this one, see how I do this, is based on what activity were you doing and how were you feeling? So let me come up to my polls and quizzes, go back here and launch this one. People are still, it looks like people are about finished voting. So why don't we 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we will end the poll. So okay, so activities, what were you doing the last time you did your BFRB? 29% concentrating, 7% driving, 4% getting ready, 0 doing housework, 18% reading, 29% relaxing, 4% watching TV, and 11% working. And the feelings, 19% anxious, 11% bored, 7% calm, 11% tired, 30% stressed, and 22% said unsure. So I'm going to stop sharing. I don't know if these are up, but I'm going to leave them here on my screen. And let's go to the answers that we got. That's time of day. Here we go.
All right. So this graph, so people, first of all, could endorse more than one activity that they were doing at the start of their polling episode, which is why this doesn't add to 100. But what you see here is the percent of time that people endorse these different activities across the 2,000 plus polling episodes. And what stood out to me when I first looked at these data were how many of these were sedentary activities. So people reported that they are working, they are relaxing, they're watching TV. So they're commonly, they're sedentary, they're still, and they're either high focus activities like concentrating or working, or they're kind of edging out sedentary activities, relaxing, watching TV. The other activity that was common, which is in sort of a different category altogether, is getting ready. So this is that, I'm paying attention to my appearance, I'm grooming, I'm looking in the mirror as a trigger of hair pulling. Um, okay, let's keep
We'll
going.
go to the next one of emotions at the start of pulling.
And then, of course, I'm a shame researcher, so I was very interested in looking at what emotions we see. Now, these are trigger emotions. So these are emotions people had that were present when they started to pull or had an urge, and started pulling. And what we found here is, going back to that first slide, the story we all hear discussed about BFRBs is that it's always in response to stress or anxiety. And that clearly is not accurate. Look at this graph. And yeah, a fifth of episodes are associated with stress or anxiety. But there's a rich range of emotions here that people endorsed as present at the start of pulling episodes. So the most common one that people endorsed was being tired. So again, pulling has this sort of stimulation function much of the time for people. People also endorse being calm. So this is one that you never see portrayed in the media, right? Or someone who's unfamiliar with a BFRB would probably never expect that being calm in and of itself can be a trigger that you might pull because you're already relaxed and it's soothing and it feels good and you want to just sort of stay in that sort of relaxed state. We also see bored. So again, that picture that BFRBs are stimulating. So when you kind of need to keep focus or you need something to do because you're understimulated, BFRBs are something that we turn to. One clinical takeaway I wanted to plug in here because I can't help myself, my clinician and researcher voice just keeps popping up, is it's important to reflect on this. If this poll was the first time you've done this, next time you notice your BFRB, ask yourself, like, how am I feeling right now? How was I feeling right before this urge or behavior started? And it can be hard to do. So you may find you're like, I don't know, how was I feeling? Don't worry, that's normal. It's normal to have a difficult time identifying emotions. Just keep trying and look curious. Just try to be curious about it. And this is important work to really help figure out what functions is this filling? What needs is this filling for me right now? Okay,
Yeah. And I'm
let's
glad you brought that up because 22% were unsure,
good point.
right? 20, right?
Yeah.
And we think that there's like three emotions, happy, sad, and frustrated, right? So, and that's not the case. There's many more emotions
And
involved.
unsure can also mean like this wasn't an episode that was largely triggered by an emotion trigger.
That's
Maybe the
true.
person
Right.
was triggered by a sensory trigger or something in that particular case too.
Right. Right.
Okay. So I was also interested. So these were averages that we were just talking about across all 2000 plus polling episodes. What patterns do we see across everybody? But I was also curious at an individual participant level, how many different common contexts do we find? So across the, 37 people, for each person, how many different contexts tend to trigger their polling? And we found it's 2 to 4 on average. On average, people had 2 to 4 repeated themes that came up at least 5 times in their own data. So this tells us polling is serving multiple functions for most people at different moments. If you came into this webinar thinking you have a singular trigger, get curious because at least from this data, it suggests that most people have at least 2 or 3. So look over the next few weeks and see if you can find any nuance, any other times that you're engaging in your BFRB that you hadn't paid attention to before that might unearth other contexts and common functions for you, because that will give you a lot more ability to respond in a nuanced way. The other thing that Ellen and I noticed is there aren't 50 different contexts. There aren't 100 different contexts. So this is manageable. It's, that lined up with what Ellen was expecting to see, and it lined up with me as a clinician, what I was expecting to see, that there are 2 to 4 contexts for most people. We can get a handle on this and learn 2 to 4 patterns. Let's keep going. Okay, so some just summary takeaways from this. First, polling is not random. There are patterns. We can make sense of them. Most importantly, pay attention, be curious, and try to learn. When you notice yourself pulling, ask, where was I? What was my body doing? How was I feeling? What
What
was I
time is it?
doing? What time of day is it? The other thing we noticed was that sedentary activities are particularly associated with urges to pull. And they can be high focus sedentary activities and they can be relaxed sedentary activities. So I've been talking about how identifying these functions and patterns helps you be more nuanced in identifying the right intervention. So an example of that might be if you notice that you're often triggered by being sedentary, trying to introduce some physical movement at those times that you've been sitting for a long time all day. But you also look at the context. So, and you want to meet your need and match the context. So, for example, if you're noticing that you're pulling a lot at night when you're watching TV, and this is a sedentary relaxation activity, your brain is craving relaxation time at that time of day. So it's probably not a good intervention to be like, okay, I'm too sedentary. I'm going to try to run on the treadmill at 8 o'clock instead of watching TV. Like that's an uphill battle, and it's not going to actually meet your brain's need at that moment to relax. But there might be another idea, like, maybe instead of sitting on the couch in that same position that always sort of has your hand by your head, maybe you sit on the floor in front of the TV and you do some gentle, like, yoga or stretching that gets your body moving. It changes your position and it's soothing, which is what you're seeking at that time. You're seeking relaxation and sort of unwinding and physical soothing feelings. So that might be another way to kind of meet that need. So that's just one example of sort of what to do with this information.
And we do want you to think about where did you see yourself in this data and what surprised you? Because I know before habit aware, if I was sitting in her office and she said, "Well, when do you think you pull?" I would have said, "Well, everywhere all the time." But that wasn't true. And I had a lot of patterns that really surprised me. So I invite you to think about that as well.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted by the Q&A. Let me put that away till Ellen speaks. Okay. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're doing with this research before I pass the baton. So we're actually taking what we learned about these hair pulling patterns and we're using it to enhance the Keen 2 bracelet nap system. So we've actually built, along with our partners at Kent State, we've built this version of the app that over the matter of 4 weeks learns an individual user's hair pulling patterns. So much like the participants in this study did, when you use this version of the app, you log the context of your pulling episodes as your bracelet passively detects them. And the app actually starts to learn your individual patterns and share them back to you. And it starts to give you strategy suggestions at the times that it's detected you're likely to pull that are matched to the context that you tend to pull in at that time. So they're matched to your patterns. So this is exciting stuff that we're working on behind the scenes at Habit Aware. This isn't out commercially yet because we are testing it in an NIH-funded randomized control trial, and the information about the trial is there if you're curious to learn more.
Oh, let's
All
come
right,
up
and
here.
so we've been talking about awareness and learning our patterns and sort of the data behind why that matters. Ellen's been doing this with folks in the community in a really cool way. So I'm going to pass the baton to her now to tell us a bit about that and how to sort of make this come to life.
Thank you, Hilary. So Hilary shared the research in the field, and I guess you might be wondering, okay, well, what's next? And when we said what's next in the research for the field, but what's next for me? What's next for you? And I do want to address the elephant in the room for those of you who have BFRB, or maybe you're a parent. Nobody wants to be part of this club. Who the heck wants to be part of the hair pulling, skin picking, nail biting club? I don't even want to be part of it, and I kind of run the thing. But here's what I learned. For those of you who don't really know who I am or are new to Habit Aware, I started as a customer. I started pulling my hair when I was 10 years old. And I was caught by my mom with bald spots. And she said, "What happened here?" And I lied and said that my best friend put gum in my hair. 40 years later, there's a lot more, but I will skip that. 40 years later, I found Habit Aware. And the bracelet worked so well for me that I reached out and asked for a job to help others the way Habit Aware helped me. And as I was working with individuals, one-on-one peer coaching or doing Keen 2 trainings, I realized people were really isolated and really alone. And they wanted to talk about strategies. They wanted to talk about the where, the when, the why, and come up with different things we could do. It was great for me. I met all these different people, but these people only had themselves. So I created a community so that we could do this wonderful work together. So, what is the Habit Aware Collective? The Habit Aware Collective is a peer supported, coach guided online community for adults with BFRBs. And what makes this different is It's not Facebook, though there is a place for Facebook. Facebook is more like an audience, and social media is a whole different thing. This is really a true community. We focused on what Hilary was talking about, the where, the when, the why, but we do it together like a team. You could think of any team, volleyball team, chess team. You could think about an academic team, robotics team. But what we do is imagine you're on the chess team and you go and someone else gets checkmate on you. I don't play chess, but someone else gets it. And then you feel terrible. And then your team comes around you and they say, "Don't worry, it's okay. You did it. Don't worry about it. Get your head back in the game. Go team." And then you have your coach, who is me, to help you with the drills and skills. And that's what we do as a team. So we have webinars with experts, we do group check-ins, we have judgment-free conversations, you've got guidance from us, we have meetups. And what we also do is 3 times a year, I do an activation challenge. So we're really putting all of the things that Hilary's talking about and we condense it into 30 days. And it springboards your healing and it also increases your healing. It deepens your healing. So let's talk about that. So the last one we just did, we do it 3 times a year, is in April. And the first week is building your solid foundation. The whole thing is building a solid foundation. But week one, we build a solid foundation of awareness training, getting your routine. If you don't wear your Keen 2 bracelet or develop your awareness, it's really hard to do this. Week two, we focus on making it harder to get to our BFRB and also working on a growth mindset. There is this term that you might have heard from Henry Ford. If you think you can or you think you can't, I believe you. So we work on growth mindset and we create the blockers that are going to work for us to make it harder to get to our hair. Week three is identifying those clues. When is the when, the where, the how? What are we doing? And then together as a team, we work on how do we in week four pause and pivot to meet that need. And for newcomers and veterans, because we have hundreds of people in the community, some have been there since the beginning, uh, the newcomers and veterans alike, we're on our sixth challenge, and there's always new insights and strategies to find. So here's my cool data that I want to present. We asked participants or members before they started the challenge, how confident are you that you can reduce your BFRB? How much shame do you feel about your behavior? On average, how much time are you spending on your BFRB in a day? And how often do you feel successful at stopping, pausing, and pivoting when you're in a BFRB episode? And this is really cool. So the confidence started out before the challenge. As you can see, it increased 56%. So it went from 4.5 out of 10 to 8.4 out of 10. And look at the shame. Shame decreased from 6.4 before to 3.4 after. That's down nearly 50%, nearly 50%. Time spent on your BFRB per day, more than 1 hour per day. Look at the decrease. It was nearly 70% before, and then it decreased to 25. And success at stopping, pausing, and pivoting. Before, 11%, after, 67%. And here's the chart all at once. Now, the data is really cool, but I bet you're sitting there going, okay, can you give me some specifics? And as I said earlier, what really changed these numbers, the numbers changed, but what really moved the needle was the collective members believed in themselves. And research tells us that when you have belief, then you're more able to make behavior change. And that's the Henry Ford quote. If you think you can and you think you can't, I believe you. Small wins, watching people succeed, being with a coach who's lived through it. And it isn't just all rainbows and butterflies, because I will in the challenge, one person ended up pulling out her eyelashes and she was really upset. And she also realized, okay, I know what happened and I feel really crappy. And the team came around her. She goes, now I know what to do. And she was able to pick herself back up much faster than she ever was before. So let's look at some more specifics. Shame. The shame was down because of this behavior. It's not just about choice and control. First, awareness, that makes me feel less shame. Connecting with others, especially when I had a slip up, was so helpful in decreasing my shame and also my ability to pick up where I left off. With confidence, other times I usually gave up when I slipped. This time I didn't. And I love this one. Every time I do a challenge, my pulling decreases and my mindset feels better, even through stressful times. I can manage it even when life is hard. Seeing the community of people going through the same thing and I'm not alone, and seeing others show up even when they're struggling. These are really powerful. And the data and the community tell a story. Hair pulling has patterns. Most people, as you have two to four repeated contacts, and our BFRBs serve a function. Understanding that, as Hilary said, is the ticket. Understanding the function it's serving is where the work begins. Also, when you build awareness together, the shame drops nearly, 46%. And success in pausing and stopping jumps from 11% to 67%. The other thing too is you might be someone out there who is doing this more in a self-help. The community can buoy you. It can be a really good resource. It can be a good support. And if you're in therapy or you are a therapist out there, this is another thing that complements therapy. It's a different, when you have one-on-one is wonderful. When you have one with a group who gets it, it opens up other windows. So we are so excited to be here and to present this data with you. It's just the beginning. And we want to thank you for being with us. We have our email addresses. You can reach out to either of us. And we encourage you, go out and get keen too. And if you need help training it, we are here. That's actually why I'm sitting here right now. When I first got my bracelet 9 years ago, it didn't work well for me. And I will say it was user error. It wasn't the bracelet, it was me. But luckily, I hopped on a training call. And once I learned how to train my bracelet properly, oh my gosh, it started to work. And by work, I mean it would vibrate when I was here, not out here. And then I was able to do all the things that Hilary and I have been talking about. Join the community. I'd love to have you. We do really good work there. And so, Hilary, we have time to answer questions. So do we have questions that we should, and please put questions in if anyone has any, you can put them in the Q&A. We'd love to understand and help. And I'm going to look through right now.
I've been trying to sort of answer them as I'm able. Uh, but someone was asking if this is the only study that's been done on BFRBs. Not at all. There are many studies that have been done on BFRBs. And to find out what's currently ongoing, I would look at just like the link I posted on the previous slide is from a website called clinicaltrials.gov. That's a US federal website that shows any clinical trial that's currently running. So you can go on there and search hair pulling disorder, trichotillomania, body focused repetitive behavior, skin picking disorder, any key term, and see what's going on. You can also look at iocdf.org. So the International OCD Foundation sometimes posts information about studies recruiting in BFRB. So those are ways to find out about studies that are going on right now.
So
I'm not sure about current MRI research. It's hard to get in the US, it's hard to get NIH funding for these conditions, unfortunately. But there is research, but it's under researched and underfunded.
Yes, and it's in this field is we're even though this has been going on since the dawn of time, because I think it's even mentioned in the Bible about hair pulling, we're in our infancy. There's so much more research right now on OCD and anxiety and depression versus BFRBs, and we are planning to change that. I thought I would read some of these so that people did hear what the answers were. I've always been very curious to understand more about whether BFRBs are more deeply rooted in things like genetics and neurochemistry, or rooted more in learned behavior, soothing mechanisms, or a combination of both. And I'm going to answer that, and Hilary, I want you to then answer behind me. I would say it's rooted in both, that there is a genetic component to BFRBs, and it is also a learned behavior because it serves a purpose. So it is a combination of both. But Hilary, would you elaborate on that? Or
Yeah, again, I think this is an area where the data are fairly sparse. So I think I would place my bet the same way that Ellen is, and I think her logic makes a lot of sense. Um, in terms of data, there are certainly family studies that show higher rates of BFRBs in first degree relatives of people who also have a BFRB. So, of course, that can be modeling or it can be genetics. It's hard to exactly know, but there's some evidence for a genetic component, but that's not explaining everything by any means. And that does suggest that there are other kind of learned and environmental factors. But it's an area that I think we have a lot of open opportunity for more research.
and I can just share anecdotally because I've worked over the last 9 years. I've met with thousands and thousands of people that I see that anecdote, from the people that I work with to help coach and train the genetic component, the learned, the self-soothing. Another question that came in is recently purchased Keen, thank you. Have struggled with awareness. Pulling has always been unconscious. Any tips? Great, you got the bracelet. Awesome. Wear it. Wear it from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed. Because you might think you're pulling everywhere all the time, and you'll be surprised. And it's going to vibrate a lot. And do you want to know what that means? It means it's working because you're becoming aware. Decide that the vibration is something awesome. It's not a slap in the face, it's a hug on your wrist. And just notice, thank you. Thank you for vibrating. And then do what Hilary said. Where am I? What am I doing? How am I feeling? What do I need right now? What is my BFRB if it had a voice? What is it trying to tell me? So that's and then join the community and I'll give you more. And then we have another great question. If you use two hands, should you use two bracelets? And the answer to that one is maybe. You might need two. I bought two right away, and some people need two bracelets. This hand is under control. This hand now has a mind of its own. Others don't. I was in the camp of I didn't need two bracelets. I got my awareness. I realized I was pulling, and I would put this hand down, and I didn't move to the other side. Some people do. I wouldn't buy two bracelets immediately, but we're here if you need a second one. And in fact, when people need two, we give you a discount. And if you need it later, you just reach out and we'll give that to you. And let's see. We talked about that. Ah, well, so someone missed the first 20 minutes of the meeting. What did we talk about? And this is being recorded, so you will be able to get it. We talked about a lot of research on our, specifically on trichotillomania. Any info on this year's conference? Now, if you're talking about a conference, there is one coming up. IOCDF, the International OCD Foundation Conference, is having a BFRB day and a BFRB track. And I will be speaking there, and our team will be there with as well. And that is July, I should know it by heart. July 9th, it begins. 9, 10, 11, and 12. And you can also email me if you have any questions about that. Anything that I missed, Hillary, or anyone have?
There's a lot of good questions.
Okay, why don't you take some of them now?
Let's see. So someone else asked if there's any research on the convergence of different sensory systems, visual stimuli, sense, taste, and tactile stimulation as it relates to the development and maintenance of BFRBs.
Mhm.
This is an awesome question. Uh, I don't know. I not that I know of, other than just other descriptive studies that look at sort of what functions BFRBs serve, and they certainly are an extremely sensory rich experience, and are often serving sensory functions, triggered by sensory things and then maintained by sensory experiences. So, I mean, I think this is really interesting to look at, but I don't know about like large studies that have looked at this beyond, just self-report descriptive studies that characterize that this is a trigger and maintenance factor.
And I would, again, the elephant in the room. No one wants to admit that they do anything with said product. So if they pull or pick, like I will be vulnerable and share is, that's part of the joy in pulling. And let's face it, it feels good. There's something about it. And if when I pull, I like to take the hair, and I know a lot of the other people out there will agree with me, and we like to rub it on our lips or bite off the root and bite it into little pieces, and then we feel all this huge shame in doing it. And when you are in an episode, if you don't get to complete the whole thing, it's not as satisfying. So there is a big component to that. And while nothing feels as good as picking or pulling, what does feel better is when we're not doing it, when we are able to pause and pivot. So I did want to bring that up. I did, there was a question about the conference. TLC uh, has, I think the word is dissolved, and they are not having a conference. So, but IOCDF IOCDF has a conference. They also, uh, what's the word?
Of a special interest group.
Thank you. But it's OCD and related disorders. So there are related disorders in OCD. BFRBs are one of them.
Ellen, I wonder if did you see this last one in here? A lot of people find Keen doesn't work for them because they're sort of too in a trance-like state to listen and respond. Um, any thoughts on this?
Yeah. Uh, yeah. The trance-like state is so common, and listening, it really is listening to the vibration. It's so much easier to stop before you start. So if we're not there yet, we're not in the trance yet. We're starting to scan, and it vibrates. You have a choice. You can pause or you can keep going. And if you keep going, you're more likely to get into that trance-like state, which is then harder to break out of. So it is listening to, oh, this is vibrating. My hands aren't where I want them to be. I'm a rock star. I'm awesome. Let me pause. And you might have to do that 14 times in, I don't know, 5 minutes. And that's okay. The more we do that and practice the pause and moving, as a lot of muscle memory and moving our hand down, the easier it becomes. And the trance-like state becomes less and less. I hope that answered your question. I'd love to talk more about it, and you can also reach out to me My email address is there. You're not the only one. They feel the urge is really, really great. And so then the question is, well, what's going on? Because it's like a wave. It does eventually crash. So if you can think back to what was going on, what was that needed to be met? How can you make maybe some lifestyle changes that can help support that?
I think even just awareness of the trance-like state,
Yeah.
you know, and giving yourself credit, each, being persistent about it. It's very hard to build to to, to practice mindfulness. But just I think, being persistent, giving yourself credit when you have that awareness, even if it's fleeting. But just trying to like your first goal is just catching the buzz and catching the trance-like state. Even if you're not in a place to change your behavior when you feel the buzz yet, maybe just starting with, okay, I hear the buzz, I'm ignoring it, but I hear it. Okay, that's a win. That's a first step that's critical to getting to the second step.
Yeah, and it's practice and making and doing what we can to make it, dare I say, fun. That's why I say the vibration is a hug, not a slap. And that's why we want to, that's the mindset piece. It's also when we're running and late. Oh my God, I'm late. I'm always late. I can't get anywhere. What's going on? What's wrong with me? And if we can just say to ourselves, this is one of our favorites in the community. I have plenty of time and know just what to do. Even when we don't, because it brings the mind, it brings the fight or flight down. Your brain wants to be right. So if you tell yourself, I have plenty of time and I know just what to do, then you're able to think, okay, what can I do to get myself out the door? And it's the same thing with our BFRB. If we can help ourselves have a phrase or something that we can go to that lets us pause to the notice, pause and what am I going to do now? And practicing that. And the conference is in Seattle, Washington. Did we miss anything, Hilary?
See, I see an interesting question I don't think we answered about the distinction between BFRBs as disorders versus symptoms.
Yeah.
And this question is how those with anxiety and ADHD may be using these behaviors primarily to cope with those conditions. For example, with boredom, sedentary activities, fidgeting, function, being the common triggers. This is a super interesting question. And, it gets down to a bit of potentially unnecessary, like slicing and dicing. Do you call these separate disorders that you diagnose, or is the BFRB really, really primarily driven by another mental health condition? And that's, the main function it's serving is to manage, the anxiety or to manage the, ADHD, boredom, and need for stimulation. Um, and I don't think it really, I think different people would look at that in different ways. Um, for most people who I have worked with, this is anecdotal, who have BFRBs and comorbid anxiety or comorbid ADHD, that's a big trigger, but it's not the only one. It's not the only function that their BFRB serves. So I think that would be my main question is if you're pulling or picking in response to understimulation and need for stimulation and you have an ADHD diagnosis, is that the exclusive reason that you're engaging in the BFRB? Or is there more to the picture than that? Then you might be thinking that they're, two comorbid and overlapping conditions where, you want to have good strategies for managing the ADHD boredom. And that's going to help the BFRB because they're so tightly linked. The other piece of the question, which I don't think you're asking, but is interesting to speak to, is, where's the line between a disorder and a behavior? Because BFRBs are behaviors that everybody engages in. And, you only technically meet diagnostic criteria for a mental health condition if it's causing clinically significant distress or impairment. Um, so many people engage in hair pulling, and skin picking, and lip biting, and nail biting, and cuticle picking to, a wide variety of degrees, and kind of don't meet that clinically significant distress or impairment criterion.
Uh, any other questions from those of you out in the audience? Was this helpful? Did you find any surprising information? I'd love to know, do you feel hope? How do you all feel with the key bracelet more relaxed? I'll tell you, it, and of course I work for the company, but it was a game changer for me. It was the one thing that allowed me to pause. Oven mitts was one thing that a therapist told me to use. Can you put on some oven mitts? Who's going to wear oven mitts?
I know.
And it was just this wonderful, elegant solution and I remember someone saying to me 6 months in, well, you need to wear this for the rest of your life. And I said, hands down, yes. And I didn't care. I had a solution. And then I realized, actually, 8 months in, I don't really need to wear it anymore. And I don't. Do I still pull? Sure. Not near, I don't meet the definition that Hilary just said. I'm able to pause and pivot. And that's what we want to teach you. So, on that note, we're so happy that you spent your Wednesday evening with us. And this is recorded and we will post it so that you can hear the replay. And if you need to reach us, you have our email addresses. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Hilary, any other parting words?
No, we're glad you joined us. Thank you. Don't be a stranger if you ever have an interest in reaching out. We genuinely welcome you to. All
Genuinely, yes. All right.
right.
Well, thanks everybody.
Bye.